Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, a conversation with Bill Moyers. We'll talk about his career, the state of journalism today, and his new documentary on Rikers Island. Then a panel of experts will join us to discuss the state of Arizona's jails and prisons. That's next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Arizona PBS, members of your PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. Bill Moyers is an esteemed journalist and political commentator whose career ranges from press secretary for President Lyndon Johnson to an award-winning host, critic, and investigative journalist. Bill Moyers' latest project looks at concerns over mass incarceration with his new documentary, Rikers, an American Jail. We welcome Bill Moyers to Arizona Horizon. Good to have you here.
I'm delighted to be here, Ted.
I have so much to talk to you about, and I want to get to Rikers and I want to get to mass incarceration, but now that I got you here, a lot of stuff is going to, it feels like things are almost out of control in this country and in this world. What do you think about when you see headlines and you hear what's going on?
Well, it's taken me a long time to figure out that democracy is a series of narrow escapes, and we may be running out of luck. From the Civil War forward, it's been a tenuous exercise, democracy, to maintain our government of, by, and for the people, so to speak. And today it's harder than ever, and I think it's more threatened than ever.
The Trump presidency, what does that say from where you sit about America?
It says anybody can be president, although not everybody should be. This is troubling because it's hard for journalists to get a grasp on a force so alien to the norms by which we live. And Donald Trump is an alien from somewhere I don't know, who is the dominant force and figure in our politics now. And he doesn't go by the rules that, even when the parties go off a little bit, this way or that way, or far off this way or that way, there's a correction. There's a counterbalance. There's a prevailing pendulum that swings back. Trump doesn't play by those rules. He has no respect for the truth. And, democracy can die of too many lies. Look what happened in the South. They drove the truth about slavery from the newsrooms, from the classrooms, and from the pulpits. And we had to go to a civil war to save the Union. We're in that kind of period now in which the rules and language and conversation of politics have changed because this man is, and I mean it in the literal meaning of that word, he is an alien to what I think about American politics being.
And yet, a sizable number of folks in America chose the alien. What's going on?
Well, for a lot of reasons. I think that he somehow tapped into that anger in the country, and this is not new to me, everybody knows this by now, that was fed up with both parties. Look, both political parties have failed to deal with the decline of the middle class, have failed to address the issues, sustaining issues of poverty, and particularly have failed to close the gap on inequality. I mean, we're at the greatest level of inequality in this country between the top and everyone else that we've ever had in America, ever in our history. And both parties let their constituents down on that. I have great sympathy for the people who were looking for someone who stood outside the system and challenged the dominance of the two parties. Mm-hmm. I have great sympathy for them. I wish it were not Donald Trump because he is a dangerous man. He's a man-child playing with America's destiny as if it were a rag doll in his gilded crib. And nobody knows how to deal with him.
And yet, what does it say about Democrats at this stage that their candidate lost to Donald Trump?
Well, it says she ran a very poor campaign, as she did. There's a new book out by two esteemed political journalists who followed that campaign, and they had covered her at the State Department. She just ran a campaign. She turned the campaign over to people who became filters between her and the public. And there were other mistakes that were made. I actually think no Democrat would have won last time because Democrats are so out of touch with a former constituency. I grew up a New Deal Democrat because my father and my mother were the beneficiaries of Social Security started by Franklin Roosevelt. And my father voted every election. For Roosevelt. I never saw my father weep until Franklin Roosevelt died. But the Democratic Party betrayed my father, betrayed working people, betrayed people in desperate need today. And by the last year's election, also the Democratic Party became so beholden to big companies, big corporations, big donors, that they were out of touch with the interest of everybody else. So I'm not surprised that she lost.
Regarding journalism and how journalism is handling the situation, the Trump presidency, the election, the current state of domestic and foreign affairs, what are you seeing from your fellow journalists?
Well, paradoxically, the Trump presidency has revivified, and the campaign and the presidency has reinvigorated a lot of journalists. I mean, investigative journalism had become an exception to the rule and not a common part of the daily routine of many journalists. Investigative journalism is today doing some of the best work it has since the Watergate hearings. You can't follow it without seeing where the course of energy and action are going in the Trump administration. I mean, this is a very, very corrupt administration, perhaps the most corrupt since the Grant administration in the 1870s. I mean, just as we're sitting here this week, the Exxon applied for a lifting of the restrictions on their dealing with Russia. And who is the Secretary of State? He's a former head of Exxon. I mean, that sort of conflict of interest it will undo, the corruption will bring democracy down. Donald Trump alone won't do it. The fact that we have fake news today that bolsters him won't do it. It is corruption that will always, and the earliest philosophers of America, of democracy, will tell you, it is corruption that will bring down a democracy and bring down a republic, and that's what we face today.
Corruption exposed by investigative journalism, as you mentioned, and we should mention that Rikers, an American Jail is Bill Moyers' latest project. Documentary tells the story of men and women who have been incarcerated at Rikers Island in New York. Let's take a quick look at the film.
When I first got there, it was almost like flying over the Bermuda Triangle. Like, once you're there, it's easy to get there, but it's hard as hell to get out.
Once you get there, you find out that it's actually just as bad as people say that it was.
There's this distinct smell of Rikers Island. It's like a mix of bleach, dirt, and grime. The bars look dirty and dusty, and the cells look nasty.
The officers just said, for all of you who've been here, you already know what to expect. For those of you who have not been here before, this is your first time, tighten your pants.
They got us inside the door, closed the gate behind us, unshackled, took the cuffs off, sent us in a room. They came in, strip searches, which was just like crazy to me.
You walk in, you're in between these two doors. You see like this gate, and then on the other side of that is the day room. And then there's other adolescents on the other side. You know, they're looking through the gate. In their mind, you know, it's like, oh, we got a victim or, you know, fresh meat.
Violence rules, predator prey. That never changes.
I'm in a situation where I can't run from. But my whole time in the streets, that's all I ever been doing is fighting. So I'm looking like I'm in a place where I always trained for, but just didn't know it.
They taught me how to use a level of violence that I could never imagine I was capable of doing.
There's a saying that it doesn't matter if you have a uniform on, right? That says correction officer, or one that says inmate. You're still doing time.
Well, being an inmate and being a CO is like a very thin line. Time stops for them too when they come to Rikers Island. It's only one bridge in and one bridge out. There's some COs that are real cool. You know, there's some COs that really understand the system, and they try to prevent these young people from coming back by talking to them.
The majority of the officers on Rikers Island are minorities. They come from where we come from. They grew up where we grew up at. Somehow they just never made it to prison.
You know, I done bought drugs from correction officers who told me they're gonna send me to the box if I don't pay them, you know, things like that. And all of that made me say, well, you know, you're just like me, you know, we're all criminals in here.
When you first enter the box, it's like a very dark and gloomy place. I mean, it kind of replicates a jail cell. It's just a little bit smaller. Floors is gray, walls is like a dark, dingy color. It's all gloomy. So it's just, it's meant and designed to keep you down. You hear people out the window screaming all day. You hear people on your tiers screaming all day.
I walk into the box and it's like, people, it's noisy. It's like everybody's screaming and it just sounds like a madhouse and just, ah. I went into the cell and the cell closes. And then just that sound that the cell, like that sound that the cell makes when it closes is like, it's a crazy sound.
It sounds like a dog kennel. Like imagine like 20 different breeds of dogs on the same so-called tier in cages and hearing just so many different, sounds of barking. That's what it begins to sound like. It's madness.
Coming home, it was hard for me to readjust. I didn't like being around people. I didn't want to share anything with anybody, like my thoughts. I didn't want to be around my own family. Like, it was just really, really hard for me to talk to people. I wanted to use violence for everything that was wrong.
My brother and my sister will have nothing to do with me. My husband's family will have nothing to do with us, my husband and my daughter included. It's very difficult. My husband and I are currently separated.
I was a stranger in a strange land. I didn't understand the language. I didn't understand. It was difficult. To this time, I still sometimes have difficulty. Last night, I went with my wife. I took her to, we were on a date. We were just walking in Rockefeller Center, and it was too much people, and I became tense, and I was like, she had to hold my hand, and she says, hey, it's easy, baby, it's easy. Just let's go.
As you've experienced coming home from jail or prison, you'll never know what it's like. You don't know what it's like to go looking for a job, and everywhere you turn, every door you open, they look at you differently and say no to you. They don't know what it's like to be hungry and have no food on the table for your family, but you out there struggling looking for a job. I've always said, it's great. Everybody's talking about these inmates that are being released, but what are you putting in place for them to come home to?
All right, this is serious business here, this Rikers Island. First of all, give us a better definition here. What is Rikers Island?
Rikers Island is the largest jail in New York City and one of the largest in the state, and it's also, according to one ranking, one of the 10 worst in the country. So Rikers Island is a penal colony. It's right outside Manhattan by LaGuardia Airport, and it's where people are taken when they're arrested, and they are often held without trial for weeks, sometimes months, sometimes years. And over the last 20 years, some incredible abuses of the prisons there have come to light through investigative journalism that we were talking about before. The New York Times, the New York Magazine, the New Yorker, public radio in New York have done some investigations of abuses that turned Rikers into a culture of cruelty. It remains a culture of cruelty, even though there have been some reforms, and it is the epitome of our national prison issue, because we have, with 5% of the world's population, we have a quarter of the world's prison population. We have 39% of those, 39% of the 2.1 million people who are in prison shouldn't be there under any circumstances. So Rikers is the embodiment of what's gone wrong with Americans' appetite for prisons.
I found it fascinating. I mean, you got a population, incarcerate maybe 10 to 15, somewhere around that 10 to 15,000. Their staff population around 20,000. Schools, clinics, barbershops, grocery stores. This is a town.
It is. It's a large town, as you say, of 7,000 to 15,000 at any given moment. But it's not a well-run town. It has not been a well-run town. It is a community that takes adolescents and locks them up, sends them to solitary confinement. We had a series of scandals in the last 5 to 10 years, as I said. One young man was arrested on the alleged charge of stealing a backpack. He was sent to Rikers. He was kept there 3 years. He tried to commit suicide. That failed. They put him back in solitary confinement with no clothes and nothing to read. He finally got out at the age of 20, and a year later took his own life. We've had a series of incidents like that because, as Tom Stoppard said, I use this quote often, Tom Stoppard, the playwright, says in his book, Night and Day, people do terrible things to each other. It's worse when they do them in the dark. And they were being done in the dark at Rikers, as I'm sure, you know, Arizona, every state has had a prison that treated people as subhuman. And I did my first documentary for CBS many years ago here in Arizona about your former sheriff, the famous one.
Yes, Joe Arpaio,
yeah,
yes.
Exactly.
He's now the ex-sheriff.
Yeah.
But
if you take the light off of institutions that are closed to the public, bad things happen.
Why not? I mean, this place is so prominent in New York. New York is so prominent everywhere. Where's the oversight? Why is this violence? It sounds like the violence is getting worse.
These things happen because Rikers was invisible. And why was Rikers invisible to all the rest of us who live there, 8 to 15 million people? Because it's on an island off the coast of Manhattan between Queens, the county of Queens, and the borough of Queens, and the borough of New York. And nobody paid any attention. These people were sent out there on a bus. The guards went out there. The inmates were sent back and forth on a bus. We just forgot about it. And you will see Rikers every time you come to New York, and land at LaGuardia, off the right wing, right below the tip. You'll see Rikers down there. But it's out there. It's out of sight and out of mind. And as Stoppard said, terrible things happen to each other.
Mass incarceration, though, as the general public don't want to know. Don't want to think about it, move them off? Is it changing?
It's changing, I think. I mean, right here in Arizona, which, as you and I both know, is still a Western city. I mean, it's the law of the West still prevails in many respects here. But I sense a change. I did a lot of reading. I'm going around to different states, finding out what they're doing about criminal justice. I sense a beginning of a serious discussion about, do we want all these people, do we have to send them to prison? Are there other things we get? Violent people, that's one issue. But people for lesser crimes, nonviolent crimes, do we want that many in prison? This study that I told you about from the Brennan Center of Justice says that 39% of our 2.1, 2.3 million prisoners should not be there. And 40,000 to 160,000 are there having pleaded guilty to a crime they did not actually commit. There's so much wrong with our prisons that the pendulum is swinging the other way. Responsible Christians have mercy on their mind, conservatives have cost on their mind, and Democrats have civil liberties on their mind. It may be that there's a convergence coming. There certainly was in Washington until Donald Trump was elected. Newt Gingrich, a famous Republican, several Republican members of the House, several Republican senators, several Democrats were beginning to discuss reforms that were bipartisan. And in fact, some Republican senators have introduced reform measures, bipartisan reform measures, in the last 2 months. So there is some hope. Here in Arizona, you're having a real conversation that I think can lead to something.
Indeed, and we're going to talk about that, the situation here in Arizona. Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, Bill Moyers and a panel of experts talk about the state of Arizona's jails and prisons.
Come and play with us.
Onward and onward.
Good ideas open up a whole new world of possibilities.
The more you know about history, the more you know about yourself.
The sky's the limit.
Where I go, there you are.
When Bill Moyers set out to create his new documentary, Rikers, An American Jail, he wanted to make sure that the film helped start a dialogue across the country about mass incarceration. Consider it done. Joining us now to talk about what's happening in Arizona's prisons and jails is Scott Decker, Foundation Professor at ASU School of Criminology and Criminal Justice, and James Ham, a former prisoner and now Director of Program Services at Middle Ground Prison Reform. Good to have you both here, along with our friend Bill. Everyone's invited to participate here, but quickly, you've seen this documentary. You've seen Rikers Island. What do you think, and how does that compare to what we're dealing with here in Arizona?
I think there are a lot of themes in the documentary that speak to Arizona, but speak to every prison and every jail system in America. The conditions of confinement that we see in jails and prisons, and I've spent thousands of days interviewing and observing in jails and prisons in the U.S., span geography, which is to say new jails, old jails, southern prisons, northern prisons. Certainly there are differences, but there are many common processes and common outcomes that exist across all of those jails and prisons.
As far as mass incarceration in Arizona, are things improving at all?
I suppose you could say that there are hints that it is changing, that it is improving, but I think Arizona is a very difficult state for change to come. But that's true everywhere. And it's true because prisons are a big business. There's a lot of money involved. There's a lot of people involved. There's a lot of moving parts involved. And no one really understands what's going on. I mean, this really is true. We think of it as an organized, very structural place where abuses happen behind closed doors. But in fact, what it is consolidated chaos because no one really knows what corrections is. They don't really know what punishment is for any given crime. And so it's all thrown to people who are just keeping the lid on.
And Bill, that goes back to what we talked about earlier, out of sight, out of mind. If you don't know what's happening out there, you don't care what's happening out there, nothing's happening out there.
And that was an extraordinarily succinct summary of what I've saw at Rikers and other prisons that I've visited and other screenings that we've had where there are, it's what did you say, controlled chaos?
Consolidation of chaos. It's consolidated chaos. It's not really structure.
There's no structure to it, that's right. And it's not that people don't care who pass those prisons by, so they don't think about them, and they don't know, as you said, what correction should be. What should we do with these guys?
I think there are analogies to what used to happen in America in the late 1800s and early 1900s, where people who had millions of dollars were oppressing workers. There were no unions. They paid them what they wanted to. The conditions were horrible. But because people knew about it, eventually unions rose and people were concerned and we had changes in the legislature, and so we outlawed a lot of that stuff. Now we have the same kind of thing, the oppression going on, only these are people that it's easy to be prejudiced against. And that's one of the things that Rikers, the show, didn't really reveal, is the prejudice that is behind all of this.
That ease of prejudice, do we see it in Arizona? And how much of a roadblock is that to reform?
I think it's a tremendous roadblock, and we see it in Arizona. We see it in most states where individuals who are imprisoned are seen as groups and categories, particularly around race and ethnicity. It's not by accident that our prisons are full of black and brown faces and minorities. And one of the real dangers is that going to prison in many communities has become so common that it's expected. At 16, you'll get a driver's license and you'll probably go to juvenile court. And so many young men pass through the prison system in many of these communities. For example, in large cities, for every 100 black women of marriageable age, there's something like 82 black men of marriageable age that aren't in prison. There just aren't enough of some groups to form families, to create stable neighborhoods.
Why is that? Why is that occurring?
Because incarceration is the sharp edge of America's racial problem. It has been since the slaves were freed, and they were then re-enslaved in enforced labor, and it was a way to keep black people contained. Hispanics too. I mean, I think that African Americans are incarcerated at 5 times the rate of whites, and Hispanics 2 times the rate. Incarceration falls heavily on the poor, and blacks in this country are poor, and the majority, and Hispanics are too. So this is the way of our dealing with unresolved race and unresolved class in this country.
Is that what we're seeing in Arizona prisons? I mean, again, why the minority numbers so high? I mean, there are people watching this program right now saying, well, all you got to do is follow the law.
Oh, I think those are the people who are voting on the laws. That's their refrain, is just follow the law. The world is a complex place, and it's getting more complex and more difficult with every change in technology. But the underlying prejudice is still there. And unfortunately, in addition to race, we also have prejudice against people who commit crimes, because we see crime as this monolithic structure, and so it's very easy to be prejudiced against these people. But if we really understood what punishment was for each individual type of crime and for each person, we could do something very different than what we're doing now.
Punishment, rehabilitation, where are we swinging right now?
I would hope we're swinging back away from punishment toward rehabilitation. The national data show 94% of people who go to prison in this country come back. And so the question isn't only what we do to them while they're in prison. The question is, what are they going to do when they get out of prison? Since almost all of them come back, we want them to be better. We don't want them to be harder. We don't want them to hate society more. We want them to have skills. We want them to contribute rather than come back and do worse things on the street. I think it's also important to say to those who would argue just follow the law, that in many cases, the kinds of things that most of us do wrong and end up in trouble for, a traffic ticket that we might miss a court date on, that we get a fine that we can't pay, well, $50 fine, $100 fine, failure to appear for a poor person is a bank breaker. For middle class people, they can come up with that money. And so these things add up, and there's cumulative disadvantage that occurs, particularly for the poor.
So, Bill, let's wrap it up here. The message of this documentary, what is it?
The message is that we shouldn't give up on anyone except the most incorrigible among us. We should believe that, as America has always believed, in second chances, and we should spend more. We're spending so much money on prisons now, we can't spend that money on education or other social services that people of all races and all classes need and to be citizens in this country. So it is to let's think through what we are doing, find out what's happening to these people as they go to prison. We are living in a country where 1/3 of the population will be arrested by the time they're 23 years of age. We cannot any longer go on locking everybody up that we don't want to have on the streets.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. Great conversation. Good to have you all here, Bill. Good to have you as well.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Good seeing you. And you can watch the Rikers documentary right here on Arizona PBS tonight at 8 p.m. That is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great evening.
If you have comments about Arizona Horizon, please contact us at one of the addresses on your screen. Your comments may be used on a future edition of Arizona Horizon. Thank you. Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.